Hey, welcome back to another tutorial. Today we're going to be looking at importing 3 random models from Sketchfab. This was a sort of request and almost a challenge really from a user on the Neos Discord by the name of Xekri. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. If I'm not, their name is in the video description. Thank you so much for this request. They were having some trouble importing one model and I was trying to sort of help them through it. And then I said, hey, just give me 2 more. We'll import all 3 of them and I'll show you how in the form of a tutorial. If you'd like this to become a thing or you're struggling with any individual models, send them to me and maybe I'll make it a series. Prime imports random Sketchfab models. Let's get started. We'll start with a little bit of background information. This will just be helpful for those who are maybe newer to Neos or newer to 3D game engines or 3D development in general. Sketchfab at sketchfab.com, link in the video description, is an amazing resource site where you can search for pretty much anything. You put in cheese, you'll get a cheese wedge. You put in table, which you're about to see, you'll get a table. You put in World War II tank, you'll probably get a World War II tank. And now a lot of these models are downloadable, but there are also models, do note that you'll find models that are either paid for or aren't downloadable, because it's also used as a purchase platform for 3D artists to sell their work and as a just sort of showcase art platform similar to, maybe DeviantArt or Pinterest or like that, just show off art, etc. So don't be, dissuaded by that if you find a really cool model that you cannot download. In some cases, you can message the author and tell them what you're doing with the project, and maybe they'll agree to give you the files. Who knows? Don't do that too much, though. You don't want to bombard them. Anyway, there's a filter that you can use on the website that will search just for downloadable stuff. When you start downloading stuff from there, do bear in mind that by default, most of the licensed stuff on there is licensed under a license called CC Attribution. That stands for Creative Commons Attribution. I'll put a link in the video description to the Creative Commons website, which includes the licensed text. But CC Attribution basically means you can do what you want as long as you accredit the authors. So in the spirit of that, these 3 models that I'll be doing do have accreditation in the video description, and there's also a link to the original model on Sketchfab, and that's because if you want to follow along at home, you'll need those model files. So we've got both the accreditation text, which is given to you on Sketchfab when you download it, and a link back to the original files. Thank you very much to the authors there. I'm not sure if you'll watch this video, but thank you. With that being said, what I've done is I've picked the 3 models. We've actually got, I should just take a look at them. If I hop over into Smooth POV here, you'll see them. We've got a end table and we've got a radio. This is sort of an old style radio and an old kerosene lamp, which is labeled as a World War II kerosene lamp, although it just looks like a generic kerosene lamp to me. These are all great models. They also represent a sort of ramp in terms of difficulty. The easiest one to import here is this end table, very simple. The radio is a little bit more complicated and also gives you a sort of insight into some difficulties you might have. And then the kerosene lamp will actually showcase some of the limitations which Neos has and sort of how to get around them. As you can see though, they're all imported nicely into Neos and they all look quite good. They kind of resemble a nice little picture. You can imagine someone listening to a radio of their kerosene lamp. I mean, if they had a radio, they'd probably have electric lights, but who knows? It looks like a, cool scene. So let's get started. So I have downloaded all 3 of these from the Sketchfab website. I'm going to go ahead and show you what's going on here. Whenever you're downloading stuff, I do recommend making a place for it, otherwise you're going to lose it later. Please don't just dump everything into a downloads folder. It becomes a mess. So here you can see I'm in my regular Neos folder and it's projects, tutorials, model importing, and inside here I have all 3 of the zips. So you can see them here. There is household props challenge, that's the end table, kerosene lamp, vintage, World War II, and radio. These are all zip archives. Now you can't unzip stuff in Neos yet, so I've done ahead and done that outside of Neos using Windows, and that's given me 3 folders, again named after the zip files. We've got end table, kerosene lamp, and radio. I'm going to go ahead and take a look inside the end table, because I said we're doing that one first, and talk about the structure of what you might find inside a Sketchfab zip. So inside this folder here, you'll see a source folder and a textures folder. This is a very common thing that you'll see on almost all Sketchfab downloads, and that's because the in-browser viewer for Sketchfab stuff can sort of mess around with the materials. You can turn it to a wireframe view, you can mess around with the shaders being used, and so they need to know the textures that are available. There's therefore they kind of split them off. I will show you a little bit later with maybe the, I can't remember which, it might be the radio, it might be the kerosene lamp, where there's a strange stuff starts happening depending on how you upload it. So let's go ahead into the source. Inside the source here, you'll see that, oh, this is one of the weird examples. Like I said, I couldn't remember. Inside the source, you'll see there's another zip, endtable.zip. My advice here is to just keep going down into the folders and unzipping stuff. I've seen up to 3 zip archives, and it gets a little bit ridiculous, but only takes a few moments. And as you get further and further down, you get more information about what's going on and the suitability for the model for your importing process. We'll go inside endtable again, and then here you'll see endtable.fbx, which is an FBX file, and endtable diffuse.png, which is a texture that will be used for the material of the end table. I want to go back up to the top here and just show you inside the textures folder briefly, because you'll see the extracted textures here. You'll see endtable diffuse again, and then a file called internal ground AO texture. If you see the word internal or ground AO texture, don't use it. It's something that was generated or imported via Sketchfab to give the ambient occlusion effect on the environment that the 3D model is within on the Sketchfab model browser. We will not need that here because it's kind of handled by Neos itself, and it's weird. Take a look at it if you'd like, but you can't use it on the actual models. Let's go ahead and go back to the source file, and I'm going to go into endtable again, and then there's endtable.fbx. Now, when you're downloading stuff, you'll probably find a set of common formats, a set of common file extensions. You'll find FBX, you'll find OBJ, you'll find DAE, and you will sometimes, because it's a rising standard, you'll find GLTF. All of these formats and things have long histories about why they exist. Just know that if you see FBX, it's probably likely to work. If you see DAE, it's probably likely to work. GLTF sometimes has issues because it's a newer format, but it is getting better and better. And OBJ will work most of the time. If you download something complicated, something that has like an animation, or it has a rig, or it has shape keys, or it looks like an avatar, and it's an OBJ, do know that that won't work. The OBJ format does not have support for armatures. You'll need to use other things for that. I'm not actually sure if the DAE format can support armatures, but I know for certain that the FBX format can. I think GLTF can as well, but regardless of that, just if you see one of those file types I've mentioned, it's worth a try. So with that end table being said, we can go ahead and get it imported. To do this, I'm going to aim my laser at endtable.fbx, and I'm going to just double press the primary trigger on my controller, and then it brings up this kind of interview screen. This interview screen is asking me, hey, what am I importing? There's a lot of options here, but for the purposes of this tutorial and the purposes of any sort of prop or model importing, select 3D model. Next, it'll ask you what kind of 3D model is it. Now, there are two options here, regular strict avatar and separable with snappable pieces. Separable with snappable pieces is more suitable for educational models that can sort of explode and be pulled apart. If you think about that sort of typical animation you might have seen of an engine exploding to show you the internals of it, that might be suitable for separable with snappable pieces. In world design or 3D creation, most of the time you want to just not do that. You'll know if you've done it, by the way, if there's a red cylinder underneath the in creation. It is a good option. It is worthwhile that it's there. It's very useful for, like I said, those educational models, but for most prop creation, you want to go regular strict avatar. I know it says regular strict avatar, but that means or. So if it's not an avatar, great. If it is an avatar, great. Just select regular. And again, here we're going to go ahead and select that. This is just single press, and it'll go on to what units is it in. This here is asking you how big do we make the object. If you've modeled it in Blender yourself, you may know how big it's meant to be, and that's meters, millimeters, centimeters, inches. Most of the time, though, if you're downloading from Sketchfab, you won't actually know. There is another option in the top right there, which is auto humanoid height. That is just for avatars. It will do weird things for models, such as making them, as tall as a humanoid, and might skew the dimensions a little bit. If you want a human-sized end table, go ahead and select it. Otherwise, go ahead and select auto scale unknown scale. So I'm going to go ahead and single click on that. You'll get to this and you'll see run import in advanced settings. If you'd like me to go over the advanced settings, I can do that later. I have not used basically half of them though, so that'll be a lot of research for me. So I'm just going to ignore that and hit run import. And there you go, we've got an end table in here. Now, even without the material, without the textures, it looks okay, right? I mean, I know it's white, but the default PBS material that's added to it by Neos means it looks okay, right? If I spin it around, it's catching the light how it should. It's causing shadows on the underneath there from its surface. If I bring it sort of around here, I don't actually think this room is configured for shadows, but if the room was configured for shadows or had the shadow settings correct, it would cast a shadow. I can grab it, I can scale it. It's a perfectly good model. Let's now take a look at making this look like how the author intended on Sketchfab. So we've got the end table. I'm now going to make it look like that wooden end table over there. So to do that, we're going to go ahead and tab back to the file browser here, and you'll see end table diffuse in the same folder as endtable fbx, and I'm just going to double click on that, and then it'll say what are you importing, and it's image texture. Like models, there's a bunch of types of images. Just click image texture if it is a texture file. Now you'll see this image file. This looks like a mess. It looks like a total mess. Don't worry about it. Just don't worry about it. you'll start to see these things come up. You might have even seen some comical ones of avatar faces where it looks like their face has sort of been skinned and stretched out. It's just how 3D modeling works. I can go over it when I cover 3D modeling, if I cover 3D modeling, but we don't really need to know about it. With that imported, that's actually the only texture for this end table, so we can get ahead and get started hooking this across. Now here's how I advise you do it. You can do it faster way, but that will actually affect the default material of the world. So this here is the default material of the world. To illustrate that, I'm going to go ahead and suck its material from the table. So I've got equipped a material tooltip here from the essential tools. Go ahead and push secondary on that. That sucks the material out of the table, which in this case is the default material. And I'm going to open up the context menu of the material tooltip and hit edit material. I'm going to go ahead and make it red. And then close that. So now you'll see we've got a red end table, and this is the material that was being used. And then if I equip my developer tooltip, turn to the left here, go create new 3D model box. Strange, it didn't actually use the default material. Sometimes it will, sometimes it won't. Regardless which, I always advise making a new one when it imports, just in case that might cause issues. That caused issues in the previous take of this video. I have no idea what's going on. Maybe I messed stuff up by the repair of the previous take I did, whatever. So we're going to create our own material. I advise you do this. It's up to you. You want to edit the default one, go for it. If you go to the material tooltip and you go to create new, and then you want to select a suitable material type. This is why I recommend doing it. You can sometimes get away with, especially if it's a more complicated material, going through the materials on the actual object. I'll show you how to do that with a more complicated object. But when it's just one, I like to just create one, chuck in the texture and drop it down there. So for this, we're going to be using PBS Metallic. We'll actually be using PBS Metallic throughout this tutorial. There are other material types. I don't have time to go all over them. I haven't actually used all of them. There are quite a few that I haven't touched, but they are all available. So we're going to go ahead and hit PBS Metallic here. This will create a big complicated dialog for you. The only thing you need to know for the end table is that you drop the wooden texture into the albedo texture thing. Albedo texture square, and I'll show you how to do that in just a moment. I just wanted to say, however, that this is called a diffuse image in the file browser. Diffuse and albedo are basically the same term, so you can use them interchangeably, but Neos in its materials usually use the term albedo. So I'm grabbing this image with one hand, doesn't matter if I've got the tool or not, and then with the other hand I'm just aiming my laser at that white square and clicking with my trigger. And now you'll see that this material ball here looks wooden. So we're going to go ahead and stick this material into my tooltip, aim it at the table, and click, and there we go. We've got a wooden table. You can feel free to, tweak the material settings there, but I'm not actually going to. That wooden table looks good to me. There's no normal map or, height map or, smoothness, metallic, or anything for that wooden table. So it doesn't look as good as it could, but that wooden table is part of a challenge, and that's why it, it's quite a basic challenge. It's also a very low try model. That's quite an optimized model, really, one texture and quite low on the poly count. Let's now move on. So we've done the end table, and now we're going to go on to the radio. I will put timestamps here, and feel free to leave off if that's giving you enough information to get started. But we're going into more complex scenarios with the radio and, the sort of cliffhanger-ish kind of stuff with the kerosene lamp. Let's get started with the radio. The radio has some surprises in it, which we'll talk about as we go. So I'm going to go to model importing here, and I'm going to go into the radios folder. Inside the radios folder, I'm going to go into the source folder, and then here we'll see radio.fbx, and we're going to import it. This is exactly the same as the end table right now. So I'm going to double click on that. Auto importing 3D model, regular avatar, auto scale, unknown scale, run import. And it imports, and you're like, hang on a minute, something's up. If I take it over here, you'll see that looks different, right? The handles are bit weird, there's no gap under here. Something's weird, and trust me, I thought something was weird too, and I'm going to show you what's weird. I actually appreciate that this has happened and gives me the opportunity to talk about it, which is that this mesh comes with a collision mesh. So what we're going to do here is equip the developer tooltip here. I'm going to aim at the radio. I'm going to hit secondary. You'll see a box appears around the radio. I'm going to go open up the context menu and go to open inspector. And then you'll see that I'm on this object called proxy radio. That's fine. We're going to just go up to the top to just take a look at the model overall before we ascertain what's going on. You'll have to do this pretty much every time you touch a model that doesn't work or doesn't look right. Like, hey, table looked fine, this looks weird. You're going to have to inspect it, and you're going to have to interrogate it. Let's go ahead and go up to the top, and we'll see what's going on. So I'm going to hit this big up arrow, which is the up arrow on the left. I call it fat up arrow, but apparently that's just me. It's the up arrow on the left. That goes up to the top, and you'll see radio.fbx. Now, it's common for FBXs to have what's called a root node. This is just where you can find everything under. General rule of thumb is to just keep going down. Now, in some cases, you'll see this notation where you see $asimp fbx $translation, and it will just keep going, and it looks like a big mess. This is an artifact of importing it. I'd actually want to open up a issue for this because none of this is actually needed. The way that Neos works is it can, it can deal with the translations here. It might be doing this just to sort of correct as it was imported. I'm not quite sure what triggers it and what doesn't trigger it. All I know is that it's not actually needed. What I do here is I go down here into it. If I get tired because it's, it's too small writing, what I can do here is select this and then push this angular bracket down button, angular arrow down button, which will refocus the inspector down to that. I'll show you that. Here it is. So that's refocused it down to that, and then I can keep exploring down this way. What I'm actually going to do is a bit different to this, and this is how I advise most of the time you deal with this $asimp FBX thing, is you keep going until you find something that looks like it doesn't have asimp in the title. In this case, it's radio 1. If you go up 1, just double check that there's nothing in the hierarchy here. So there's nothing here. It's a completely blank slot. So what I do here is I go ahead and I grab radio. So I'm grabbing radio. I've got radio 1 in my hand, and I drop it on root node, and then I select the root of that $asimp mess, and I hit delete, and it's gone. We don't need to worry about it. When I go inside radio, and you'll see we've got proxy radio, and then we've got $asimp FBX $. So I'm just going to go down again, drag proxy radio, drop it on radio, and then delete, and then we've got a much cleaner hierarchy, and I don't have to think about it. I will inquire what's going on there with the team, but for now it's pretty simple to deal with. I know it's a bore, but a few seconds and it's gone really. Now we've got two models here, and I need to figure out which one is the actual radio and which one's the collision mesh. To do that, I'm just going to go ahead and select them, and then I'm going to go ahead and turn off the mesh renderer. When I turn off the mesh renderer here, you'll see instantly that the radio now looks a lot better. We've got buttons, the dials are a little bit more thicker, as in they go into the radio more. There's a beveled edge on the radio, like a border. There's buttons on the top here. This handle on the top, I can actually put my hand underneath it now. So what that tells me is that the mesh underneath it here, proxy radio, is a proxy mesh or a collision mesh. So for that, I'm going to go ahead and actually remove the mesh renderer, because we just need the static mesh here, and the static mesh here on the mesh collider, and that's fine. It could just stay there like that, and it will work as the mesh that we're using for grabbing. But we need to go ahead and remove the mesh collider for the one above it. So here's radio 1. And then we're just going to go ahead and remove the mesh collider. And now what we've got proxy radio, which contains our collision mesh, and we've got radio 1, which contains our visuals. I'm chuckling a little bit in my head because Radio 1 is the most popular broadcasting station for radio in the UK. So every time I say Radio 1, I'm hearing some of the announcers from my time in the UK saying, "Welcome to Radio 1" and stuff like that in my head. There we go, we'll carry on. So now we've got that sorted. The model looks better again. Again, it doesn't look as good as it should, but I can tell that this is a radio. There's knobs and dials on it, but we're missing detail, of course, from the textures. I'm going to go ahead and take a look at the Radio 1 model that we've got here, and you'll see there's actually two materials on it. I go over this in a tutorial where I talk about two materials or multiple materials on a mesh. I'll link that in the video description. We'll also be covering here though. What you can see here is that they're actually named glass mat and radio mat. And so what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to pull out the radio mat by grabbing radio mat. There we go. And I'm going to pull out glass mat and put it to the side as well. And now I've got radio and glass. There's no real way to label these as they come out. If I'm doing lots of importing, sometimes I will literally put a piece of text above them if I'm just getting frustrated and keep confusing them. But with two, I can totally remember that this is radio and this is glass. If you struggle with that sort of thing, something I advise is whilst you're importing them, set them to like really distracting, vibrant colors, such that you know which one's which, and then you can clear the color later. So there we go. I made the glass green and the body red. I know which one's which. I'm not going to forget that. So now you'll see that it's called glass mat, and so glass is usually an interesting thing. And I'll show what's going on as we import the textures. But let's go ahead and import the textures. We can actually show that. I kind of did things the wrong way there. So let's go ahead and take a look at the textures for radio mat. We'll talk about them here. So we're going to go back to radio. We're going to go to into textures. We're going to just take a look. So here you'll see glass mat diff, glass mat metal spelled wrongly, glass mat normal, glass mat op, glass mat rough. That internal ground texture again, so we don't need that one. You will then see, ignore metallic smoothness for just a moment, you'll see radio mat diff, radio mat metal, radio mat normal, and radio mat rough. So what we have here essentially is the texture files for both materials. They're conveniently separated by this internal ground texture and the metallic smoothness one. So you can see sort of half and half here. We actually want to import all of these so we can show you what that looks like. So what I'm actually going to do now I know that they're there is I'm going to go ahead back up to radio and I'm going to select textures here. When I select textures, this icon here on the top right will ungray itself out and you can click it. When you click it, this folder importer will appear. This allows you to import whole folders. What you want to do here is select batch import and then select image stroke texture. That'll bring in a grid of textures. This may take longer than it's taking me, and that's because I've already imported these before, and so Neos recognized that and picked them up. They're probably actually just stuffed under the ground somewhere. And now you'll see that there's a grid of textures. And again, it's not really clear what's going on here because you're not really sure what's what. But there's actually a great tool, which you're holding in your hand, the developer tooltip, that can help you out here. So I'm going to go up to this blue square, and I'm going to hit secondary on it. What did I missed it? There we go. And you'll see glass matte normal appears above there. If you can't read that, just sort of move around a little bit and take a look at it. I did have a tool that I've lost, I think. I'll have to see if I can put it back in my public folder, which just displayed the name of an object you aimed at on the tooltip there, which is a great featured tool for when I have a bunch of these in the world. But usually I just select it with the developer tooltip and then read it. That might look a bit small on your screen, but as I bring it closer, you'll see it gets even smaller. Trust me, in a headset, it's okay to look at. And if it's not, just go further away and it gets larger and you can take a look at it. So we know that's glass. So what I do is I move that to the right because I know it's glass, and then I just kind of sort of organize stuff. So I look at this one, it's glass. Okay, it goes to the right. Glass goes to the right. That's glass as well. It goes to the right. Metallics, move this. We'll leave that one for now. Radio matte, that goes to the left because it's part of the radio. And then I can sometimes do via vision, right? So this is the radio matte diffuse, which remember is just another name for albedo. You can see it looks like a radio, right? We've even got the word radio. I know it's upside down, but there's the word radio right there. So I know that's the radio. And then I can see the same structure here. I can see these names, numbers, and dials here, and radio again here on this one. So I can put that to the left. Same with this one, I can roughly make out those dials, so put it to the left. Same there, I can see the dials to the left. Same here, you can see it in the dials, put it to the left. This one here is the internal ground texture, so we're just going to go ahead and chuck that over there and ignore it. And then here you can see glass matte rough. Cool. Alright, so we're going to start with the glass. And the reason we're going to start with the glass is, unfortunately, none of these textures are actually useful. If they're 100% black, which this one is, they're the equivalent of basically saying, don't use me. And here, this one is, I guess, a little bit transparent, but again, not needed. This one here is what's called an opacity map. We don't need that for our purposes, at least I don't think so. I'm looking at the glass, so I'm actually going to chuck that to the right as well, so we don't need it. Glass matte metal, again, it's black, so we don't need it. And then normal, I don't have particularly good vision when it comes to sort of really low resolution normal maps, but I think that's just a blue square, so we're going to again chuck that to the right. What this actually means is, unfortunately, we don't need the textures for that material. We can just recreate it here in Neos, but we actually don't have to. There's this amazing folder in Neos Essentials called Materials. I'm going to go see that there. Neos Essentials is a folder that you should have in your inventory. Within Neos Essentials, there is a folder called Materials. We're going to go ahead and select Materials. And then we're going to go ahead and find glass and select glass. And then these are ready to use glass materials. I know they look like blank squares. That's because they're transparent glass. So I'm going to go ahead and just spawn each one. Just double click on them. And you'll see here that we've got 3 varieties of glass. They all look a little bit yellow, and that's because they are reflecting the reflection probe of this room. Actually, the skybox, because I keep forgetting to set up a reflection probe for this map. But they are reflecting the reflection probe, and that's because glass is quite reflective usually. What I'm going to do is just choose the glass I like. In this case, I'll choose this one. I'm going to run over to the mesh render, and where it says glass matte, I've got this material glass in one hand. I'm going to go ahead and just click that in the other hand, and it's loaded in there. And you'll see, cool, glass, right? It's glass. It looks like glass. So we're actually done there. So I'm going to go ahead and put this one here where the glass material was, close that up, and then delete this green ball because we don't need it, because we've got our glass material sorted. That might have been a long-winded way of explaining that, but I do often see it on Sketchfab materials where the glass textures just come in as mostly blank. I'm not quite sure what the opacity map here is about, but more on opacity maps when we get to the kerosene lab. This is going to be a long video, but I think it's worth it. There will be timestamps as you like. Some people like these informational videos. I heard one person the other day said that they fell asleep watching my videos, and it was quite touching. So thank you for who that is. I won't reveal your name, but thank you. So now we're going to go ahead and take a look at these. So I'm going to just sort of spread them out again now that we've only got one to deal with. We can take a look at them. Like one might have disappeared. What did I have on? Oh, it's fine. We got the right ones that we need. So again, here I'm going to go ahead and look at them. So here we've got the diffuse map. So this is the albedo texture. I'm going to grab it, select albedo texture, drop it in. You should start seeing things look great. It's a Philips, actually, like that sort of comical brand name. And we've got radio stations here. The dials sort of look more dial-y. Everything's still red, and we don't actually need that anymore because, like I said, we've got one material. So I'm going to go ahead and drag that to white. Turn around, and there we go. We've got sort of an old star radio from Philips. Okay, the next one that's easy is the normal map. You can tell that because it usually looks like 3D-ish, but only in the sort of blue and green area. That's just because it's a normal map. Chuck it into normal map. It will turn red when you place it into normal map. Don't worry, it's just a internal Neos thing. It's still a normal map. It's actually a more efficient normal map when it's red, or at least I believe that's why that was done. Now we need to come to the great conversation about these two maps here. So this one on the left here is roughness, and this one on the right here is, hello, give me a name. There we go. This is metal. So Neos uses the Unity standard PBS shading. So I'm going to come over here. So this is the PBS metallic shading. I'll also link this in the description. If you can't read it in my video, that's totally fine. What it means is it uses albedo for RGB of the overall color of an object. What that means is like, hey, if you want this part of the object to be yellow, as in this top part of the project of the model to be yellow, make it yellow on your texture file. There is some information about metals and stuff like that here for luminosity and stuff like that. That isn't actually the important part. It's just showing here that albedo uses the RGB of the albedo texture, which is fine. That's why you can have, a red radio, yellow radio, green radio. It uses all the values. The important part is this part at the bottom here. What this shows is that metallic defines where a surface appears to be metal or non-metal, and that is the red channel, and smoothness is the alpha channel. And the key part here is, for textures, this is stored as the alpha channel of the metallic map. This throws a lot of people through a loop as it's somewhat different to some other engines or some other shader types that you might have seen, in Unity, etc. But it is actually the sort of Unity standard for metallic stuff. I'll link the page and the diagram. You can take a look at it. This does present an issue often, though, when you download models from Sketchfab and other sources, or when you make them as a 3D artist, because some workflows will actually spit out this roughness and this metallic image as two separate files, and you're like, how can I use them? It turns out that this is a common enough problem that a great community member by the name of Xekri has made an online tool for this. I'll link it in the video description. I don't want to spend too much time detailing how it works. It's very simple. When you go to it, you'll see that there is a two file upload boxes. The top one will be the metallic, and then the next one below there will have a drop down to the left which says roughness or smoothness, and then another file upload dialog, and then you just hit create, and what it does is it will combine them in exactly the way that Unity or Neos needs for the PBS metallic shader. So what it does is it takes this one and it makes it the red channel. So you can see here, if we look at this and kind of overlay it, it makes this the red channel. And then it takes this, and I believe it inverts the alpha on it. So you can see here, that's gone a little bit transparent. And again, if I overlay it, it looks normal. And that's why it's called metallic smoothness. And that's because when I combine them, it turns into metallic smoothness.png, and I saved it back to the same folder. That tool is exceptionally useful. You can do it yourself in Photoshop if you would like. If you'd like more information on that, do see the video description where there's a more sort of technical description of how to do it. But honestly, Xekri's tool is great. So go ahead and take a look at that one. I used it for this model and the lamp, and I use it for quite a lot of my own assets as well. I'm going to go ahead and grab this one. It does look a bit funny with the red channel. Don't worry about it. Just drop it into the metallic map, and there you go. You'll see things now have got sort of metal shine, like the yellow, as I called it before, is now sort of almost brass. It's probably like a foil that they used to use. I'm pretty sure I've seen one of these radios, like not this one, of course, because it's Philips, but, and then this looks a little bit reflective because I believe it's leather of some kind, but it looks a lot better now that that's in there. So now we can give it a spin around, take a look at it a little bit more. Looks great on the back here. You've got audio output, screw holes, etc. I'm not quite happy with the way that the glass has come out, but it is there, and it will be reflective if there's light in it. So if I turn it this way, I'm not sure if this is picking up on the video, but it is reflecting that. It's just because behind that there is a white bar on the albedo texture. Probably actually see that here. Yeah, it's here. So that's the white bar, and that's why it kind of, the glass effect kind of went away, is because the white bar is there. But, if you catch it in the light, you'll see the albedo there. So if I go ahead and put that over the top, you'll see that we've got the radio in there. I know that was a lot of talking. I know that might have been confusing with the combining. It does come up in the Discord a lot. Honestly, when you look at this guide on Unity's site, it becomes very clear. There's even guidance about sort of, like copper, iron, platinum, silver, etc., and what things look like at various metal values. It's great. So I will link that. There's also information on other standard Unity shaders, which also do map to some of the shaders you might see here, such as PBS Specular, etc. So that is the radio. What are we at? We're at 29 minutes. I'm just going to keep going. What's your name again? I'm sorry. Xekri, yes. Sorry, I keep forgetting it because I'm finding it difficult. If I can pronounce it immediately, I'll remember it. But if it's difficult to pronounce, sometimes I apologies for that one again. So Xekri, we're now going to go on to the kerosene lamp. Hope you're appreciating this. It's a lot of time. So let's go ahead and go back to our file browser here. And we're going to go across to model importing again. And we're going to go ahead and go into the kerosene lamp vintage WW2 on World War II. Inside this, we'll find what I call a mess, but it's totally fine because you just, like I said, just keep extracting. So if you go inside source textures, you'll find model the zip. We go inside model, we'll find model, and then inside there, we'll find a DE file. I just realized I need to tidy up a little bit before we get too many images in there. Always tidy up in between importing assets. You'll thank me later when you're looking at normal maps and thinking like, is this the normal map for my radio? Is this the normal map for my kerosene lamp? Or is it a normal map for a Teletubby? Who knows? A good idea. I should make normal maps for my Teletubbies. Anyway, check my public folder for Teletubby avatars. So I'm going to go ahead, just clean up. You can also grab these with your hand. That's totally fine. Also, I'm going to leave the glass textures over here just in case we need them. Actually, we don't. I know that we don't, so I'll just go ahead and delete them. Now we've got a clean slate and we can start on that kerosene lamp. So again, opening up the file browser here, we've got modeled.dae, which is the DAE or Collada format for models. This again should work quite well. There were some issues with it in the past, but it does work quite well. I do find that DAEs are sometimes more messier in terms of hierarchy, but that's totally fine. We can deal with anything. So 3D model regular, auto scale unknown, run import. And here we go, kerosene lamp. It actually looks quite well. Of all the models here, this is the one with the highest poly count. It's still a reasonable poly count, but looking at this topology, a professional video game artist might have done a little bit better if it was targeted for a game. But for a free asset that's coming into Neos, it's totally fine. Like, don't worry about it. So I'm going to go ahead and take a look at it again. So we're going to go ahead and open Inspector. Go out to the root, and again I'll show you that this is just a simple one part mosh. I did this because I want to talk about the material on it. Which again I'm going to create a new one. I know that there's one on there. I just like creating a new one, honestly. It just, I don't know, it reinforces that I need to choose what type of material I need to use. So PBS metallic, here it is, and then I need the texture file. So I'm going to go back to the file browser here. I'm going to go into textures, and I'm going to go ahead and take a look, make sure I've got the one I need. Yep, so I've got here kerosene lamp albedo, AO, we'll talk about that in a moment, emissive, metallic, normal, opacity, roughness, and metallic smoothness, which I got in from Envrix's tool again. So I'm going to back out to model. I'm going to select textures, select that arrow at the top there, close the dash, batch import image textures, and they'll all come in again because they're all cached. And then we just put one and one together again. So here's the albedo. I can tell that by just the way it looks, but if you're not familiar, go ahead and select it. It says kerosene lamp albedo. This time it's named albedo, so a little bit clearer. Drop it into albedo. We should probably drop that on there so the model starts taking shape. There we go. Already looks quite good. It doesn't look like a metal kerosene lamp. It looks rustier than I would expect, but you can already see it's starting to come alive. I always do the normal second because it causes so much life when you have the normal. You start seeing depth and stuff like that. So there's the normal. This one I believe is the metallic, so that can go over there because it's combined over here with the roughness. So here it is, and here you can see that red strip really quite prominently. It's just like a twiglet. I was going to say something else, but yeah, twiglet coming down there. So that goes into metallic map. There you go. Now it's starting to look metallic, particularly like this piece of rust here, where they've got less metal. There's actually probably less smoothness in terms of the actual texture file, but it looks like rust is there. Perfect. Let's see what else we've got. We have an AO map. So AO stands for ambient occlusion. Ambient occlusion maps go into the occlusion map slot. Ambient occlusion is another word for occlusion. That just changes the way that the light affects it. It changes the ambient occlusion for the material. And then on the right here, we have an interesting looking mesh. If it looks like a light or it looks like it's glowing, it's usually what's called an emissive map. We can select that and see that it's an emissive map. That means we can go along to the emissive map and drop that in. That's not all you need to do sometimes. You can go ahead and drag this emissive color, drag that all the way up to the top, and that will be the emissive map sorted. And then we come to a little problem. So this is what's called an opacity map. And what this is showing is what areas of the model should be transparent, what areas of the model should be opaque, and what areas of the model should be translucent or let partial light through. And so we can line them up if we take a look at the albedo texture here to figure out what's going on here. I'm not quite sure which way round this is. It doesn't unfortunately matter because I can't use it. I did look through all the materials and I can't use it. But here you can see that the glass portion is meant to be sort of transparent, sort of combining it with the actual visuals I'm seeing below. And, you know, this candle here, part of the kerosene lamp, is also meant to be slightly transparent here. We can't unfortunately use this, so we're actually stuck here, and you'll see that matches the one over on the table. To see what's going on here, so that you can understand... Okay, there's a new Neos building. It scared the crap out of me. We'll continue. If I put my head inside the lamp here, you'll see... do it the right way around here. There it is. But there is something in there. To show you what's in there, what I'm going to do is go ahead and... Did I close the material? I did close the material. Didn't mean to do that. Let's open the material up again. If I go ahead and swap this down here on blend mode to alpha, and transparent alpha, what's going on here? Oh, there we go. It's just because I had the lamp the wrong way around. So here you go. You'll see that there's like a sort of candle flicker effect there, but because of the opacity maps and things like that, it's not rendering correctly according to the albedo and the opacity map. What's meant to happen here is that this part is meant to be slightly transparent, such that you can see through and you can see that flickering thing, and then the border around the flame is meant to be transparent as well. Unfortunately, that's not compatible with the PBS metallic shaders that we have, but I do have a way around it, and this unfortunately involved Blender at this time. If you'd like to see opacity maps, do double check all the other shaders. I haven't checked them all, I haven't had time, but also then do take a look at the GitHub for an opacity map request. If there is one, I'll put it in the video description. But what you can see here is that what we've got is essentially, and let's actually undo the opacity here so I can talk about it a little bit better. There we go. What you'll see here is we've actually got sort of two parts. We've got a metal part at the bottom and a quite clear glass part at the top. So what I would do is I would go into Blender and I would select the glass part here and I would split it off to its own material and then re-import the model so that there are two material slots, like we had with the radio over there, where the dial is located inside that glass pane. So the glass pane was a separate glass material. So in this case, you'll have a glass material for this glass portion and then a sort of metal rusted material for the bottom portion. And then you'd be able to apply a glass material to the top and a metal material to the bottom. And then you'd have to sort out the flame another way. I probably wouldn't use their assets here for the flame. What I would do is use a particle system for that. If you go to my public folder, you will be able to turn off Pro UI for a moment. My inventory is a mess. There's some stuff I can't show for project reasons. Let me just navigate to my public folder. You can find my public folder in the directory. The directory is a world where public folders are listed. So here in the public probable frame folder, if you go ahead and go into particles, you'll find fire, and then you can go ahead and grab this. You might want to configure it so it's a little bit less violent, but you can imagine if this was in here and a little bit smaller, it would look like a lamp. It also has a light on it, so it gives off a light, and it looks more like it's burning. So I probably wouldn't bother with their textures. I might actually just delete that when I'm doing the Blender work. But there you go. That's what I meant by a sort of cliffhanger and a point where, you know, Neos sometimes cannot import stuff. That's because Neos only has a certain number of shaders available. This is not intentional. It's just a sort of limitation on the roadmap. A solution for this problem is coming. There is an issue about it, but it will take quite a long time, as it is a large feature that needs a lot of thought, planning, and execution by the entire team. So do stay patient. Like you've seen here, I mean, if I went and made this top transparent again, which I can just do if I do this, not additive, transparent. It looks okay even with it being transparent. You know, it still looks like a nice lamp. If I, you know, had that glass material on the top part, that would look perfect. I mean, I love the rust on the bottom part there. So I hope that made sense. If you have any more questions about this, or you would like me to do this again for the 3 models of your choosing, go ahead. I quite enjoyed recording this video. I do know it went long. The Neos update scared me, but that's what happens when you record 30-minute long tutorials. And I'll see you next time. Thank you once again to, sorry, I'm going to pronounce this wrong again, Xekri for the request. I will see you next time. Thank you.